to another episode of Prodigy Search Presents. I'm Mark Resch Jr., partner at Prodigy Search. Today, I'm excited to speak with Meredith Scerba, Senior Associate Director of Athletics at the University of South Florida. Meredith, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.
Of course. So prior to USF, you spent time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, World Rowing Championships, and the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, where we first met. Why don't you jump in and talk about your current role at USF, maybe the day-to-day responsibilities, help people understand what that title, that lengthy, I think I probably even left a few words of that title out. So help us understand your day-to-day.
Sure. So being a part of what they call external affairs is really basically everything that's fan-facing from a collegiate athletics perspective. So under my realm, I oversee the marketing staff, I oversee the communications staff, or your sports information directors, your, in this case, what we call Bulls Vision, which is our TV, radio, broadcast, and ticketing. So everything that your fans are going to touch or be experiencing through social media, websites, on-site ticket purchasing, or anything they're going to read is all really through this external team. So from a day-to-day, University of South Florida has 19 sports in our realm, and each of those kind of making sure that we are engaging our community. We are driving ticket sales, of course, but informing our community about who we are as a university in a big city that's got 3 major sports teams. So we do have a little bit of a unique experience compared to a lot of college towns. We have a lot of uphill battle and just trying to make sure that we're relevant within the sports scene in Tampa.
What about that transition, right? I mentioned your background, and I think I actually left out the Cavaliers, which is, I'll say many moons ago, but it was just like yesterday. So you have this career that never really included college sports, although you've touched it, and you clearly have crossed paths with college athletics. But how did that transition go for you? I mean, we talked prior about the number of events and games, and clearly the makeup of an athletic department is very unique as it relates to maybe, or as compared to a professional sports franchise. So how did you make that transition? Talk about making that move over to the college space from your prior stops.
So, it's unique, Mark. I was a college athlete. So when this piece came to me originally, this opportunity, I really actually thought, oh, okay, this is going to be great. I've been a part of that scene. Very different than what I expected, very different than what I have been a part of and where my experience has been. And as a whole, of course, our template of our jobs and the experiences we've had in the past, you can make relevant and you can bring to the table to definitely do your job and do it well. But one of the things that I felt was unique and different was that a lot of people that are in college sports have only been in college sports. It's a little bit of a, that's all you've been a part of. So I was the newbie. I was very much the outsider when I first started, and I am still thrilled that Michael Kelly took a chance on me, but he was kind of in that same domain, coming from the event world, which is where I came from. And I think it allowed me to bring a different perspective to the table. And I think it took a little bit more time to build clout or, respect from my peers who didn't see me as someone coming from that college scene, but also someone coming from athletics. It is very different. I think the most incredible challenge I have faced was my lack of knowledge on compliance, the academia side and how that interacts and how much the university affects everything we do every day, because these are student athletes. They're going to school and their priorities and the things that they need to do. Athletics was truly a second, but in my world of that marketing, communications, TV, radio, broadcast, I'm trying to push and especially ticketing, I'm trying to push to drive something. And in my past, in the pro side, working at the Bucks and the CR community relations side of it, or even at the Cavs when I was in group sales and things like that, I was looking for things to incentivize people. And that a lot of times utilized using kids. I can't go and recruit anybody to buy tickets that are 8th grade or under, and so I'm like, so it's kind of a unique way I have to look around the typical form of how I would do my job in the past and helping promote and market to the youth and to their parents. I have to do it a very different way. So I'm sure I got my hand slapped, a couple times in my thoughts or questions, but at the same standpoint, I've learned, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great challenge.
So, and this isn't necessarily not going on USF, but in general, going back to something you mentioned at the beginning of that answer, could universities and athletic departments use outside perspective? I mean, I guess some of them are making those hires, right, to where they're not all lifers across the board, external relations in particular, because that applies to you. But could they use an infusion of that outside, some new and fresh ideas, because it has been, there are lifers within that space?
I absolutely think so. And I will be pretty blunt, and this is of no criticism to it, but I felt that when I first started, a lot of the conversations we had were, well, this is how we've always done it. And I think too many people get into a stigma of here's what we have always done, or this is how everyone else does it. And I'm not sure that that's always the right way. And I think that even in the hires I have made since being on board the past year and a half, I've actually taken the untraditional route myself and hired my new director of marketing. Is from Red Bull. He's never worked in college athletics. He was in athletics himself, but same thing. He brings a very unique and different perspective. And I think that that rattles the boat at the beginning, but then people start looking at things differently and get a little bit more creative. And it also brings a little bit of spark of life. And it really sets us apart. And isn't that what we're all in this for? We're not here to be just the same old, same old. We want to be unique and different and fun. And whether your coaches are coming from a University of Clemson or, wherever, they have seen a lot of this top-notch stuff. And then when they can come and see that we're doing something different and it's working and it's unique, I think that's even better. And I personally think the most important piece of that is too many times people are coming from university to university and they don't take into perspective where they live, the community, how the people that live and how they engage that community that have a very different perspective on our sport than they did somewhere else, So if you are in Chapel Hill, of course, that Carolina basketball or this or whatever, and there's kind of a perception. You come to Tampa and it's this perception. This is how our university should look. So I think when you look at the different locations, you have to take into perspective your community. And I don't know that that's a natural reaction when you're coming from just university to university to university.
Great point. And I think even to we won't talk about every single stop of your background, but even with your prior role with Buccaneers, right? I mean, you were hired despite not coming from another NFL franchise or another, Big Five franchise where you did community relations. And so I like the fact that your path has had that and by the way, that can be a daunting task and quite terrifying, right? Stepping in, well, I didn't come from the Dolphins community relations. And so I got to learn a lot. As you said, compliance is one where I guess I would assume compliance is something that you'll still learn every day until you leave that organization. So kudos to you. Let's talk about Cleveland for a second, right? I think, that run was 10, 11-year run with the Cleveland Sports Commission, securing many events for the city and doing exceptional work there in the community. Let's talk about some of the successes that stand out from that. And I don't want to put you on the spot of going through all 10 years there, but what are those key events? I can't believe I was part of bringing these types of events in. And then, by the way, here's the result. Once we brought them in, we still had to execute. So talk about maybe in a snapshot, some of those things you're proud of from that Sports Commission run.
Absolutely. Like you said, 10 years there. I was a baby. I felt like when I started, and when I left, it was just, it was an incredible growth experience. My boss there, David Gilbert, gave me so many opportunities to grow and to expand my abilities. And I think he really taught me quite a bit to launch my career. And truthfully, it was all a building block, right? So at the end, when I was given the chance to be the executive director for the National Senior Games, that was game changing for me. And I feel like it was kind of the buildup of everything that I had done through the 9.5 years prior to, where the National Senior Games is basically the Olympics for seniors. And in this case, they actually, we had 22 sports and 10 different locations all over the city. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. And the first time in my career actually raising money. So $3+ million that we had to raise, and I got to be a part of that experience and learning that. On top of my operations experience, and then on top of it, marketing. And why I bring this up as an example is this gave me a chance to really develop an org chart. We had 30+ people that came in just to work for this event. So I got to really learn how to be a better manager, a larger scale than my 3 or 4 that had worked for me all the time. I think on top of that, the interesting twist was that we changed a very large number of people's perspective on Cleveland. You talk about the senior demographic, they were more they weren't thinking of LeBron James. They were thinking of a fire, that this river was on fire. This is a perception of a steel-based, city that people didn't really want to go to.
Yeah.
And I never forget, like when everyone, they kept bashing us at the beginning. We were going to California and Palo Alto, and then we were in Houston, and all these folks were just raving about these other cities, and they're like, Cleveland, we're going to Cleveland. And the best part about our staff of trying to change their minds and change their perception of a city, not only come be a part of the games, have probably the most amazing experience of their lives. I have received beyond words the number of people that have said, not only do you guys do a great job at running the event and bringing it, giving us an opportunity to come expose us to a new city, but we've now fallen in love. We love this place. We're now your greatest ambassadors. We now have 18,000 people that went out and became our ambassadors. So I think that said a lot for, we weren't solely focused on this narrow event. We were looking at something a lot bigger and more holistic. And I've taken that experience and tried to really do that everywhere I go, from World Rowing to even US Athletics. We're more than just a university. We're more than just a football team or an athletics team. We have so much more to offer because there's people, and there's people involved in this, and the city involved in this. And people get an emotional attachment when you give them a bigger holistic picture than just one narrow piece.
I think what's fascinating about what you described too, you mentioned having to generate revenue and fundraising at that time, but that role, and again, if anybody wants to look through your LinkedIn profile or resume from several years ago, it talks about everything that you did there, right, in Cleveland, but then it translated, by the way, to World Rowing, which we can get into in a second. And what I love about that is, yeah, it was operations, yes, it was events, but it was also sales, marketing, fundraising, PR. Like, you became this, Jack Jane of all trades, and that's a tough skill set because it was the event nature of what it was, right? What those two roles were. It wasn't just a day-to-day thing. It was, okay, now we're bringing a major event to this city, and in the World Rowing Championships, an international event, to this location. So let's talk about the World Rowing Championships. You and I can laugh and talk about it at a different time, some of the challenges. So you're going to appreciate this question. The biggest challenges, but also what you're most proud of from the World Rowing Championship, because there clearly was two, and we've talked about it a lot, but also you can follow enough and read enough stories about the great things that the World Rowing Championships accomplished, but also some hurdles you had to overcome, if you don't mind touching on that briefly.
Sure. Probably the greatest challenge of my life, in a few different ways. Needless to say, leaving Cleveland, which had become a comfort level, I'd been there for quite some time. I knew where to go, who to see. I picked up and went to a city that I knew no one, didn't have any connections. No one knew me. They didn't know what I was capable of doing. And this was really a really large scale event for the city of Sarasota. There was a lot of money being brought in and a lot of money of being supportive of this event. So there was a lot riding on my shoulders as I first came in, and I was the sole person really working on it. And I think that the evolution of taking it and growing a staff, and I took, I didn't have a big budget because we were still raising the money to run the event. So, that piece was very challenging, but being able to get some young, really talented folks to trust me. I called in a lot of favors to some friends that were contractors that were working in different places for them to trust me and come and be a part of it. And they gave me everything they had. So building the staff that knew nothing about rowing was step one, in a city that was not 100% ready or enthused about this event, I think, because they just didn't understand it. So that was a big obstacle. So we had to really, I remember sitting back with the staff and saying, we need to step back and we need to educate. We need to get these people to understand what this conceptually means. We're bringing the Olympics basically to Sarasota, and that's what they can come and see. Whether you're a rowing fan or not, you have the opportunity to see some world-class athletes. So we get the staff in place. We continue down the path of raising money, which was a continuous all the way to the day it ended and then some. We then obviously continue to build this event. Incredible experience beyond words, because the community definitely rallied. The closer and closer, we only had 2 years to put this together. So building this block, and an interesting twist was our folks in Europe, which of course rowing in Europe is like American football. I mean, it's a big deal. And so they were kind of like, oh, the Americans, the Americans, do they really know how to do this? And it had not been in the United
It had not been in the U.S. for many years. Yeah.
23 years. And so they really didn't have a lot of trust in us. And of course, to make sure that we fill the stands, we had to Americanize some of the things that we did by creating some more in-game experience stuff. When we first approached it, they thought we were crazy. They ended up loving it, but we had to put our own twist to it. We had to own it and really get people to get behind us. But Mark, regardless of fundraising, regardless of building staffs, regardless of overcoming a perception of the Americans don't know how to run rowing, the biggest and craziest obstacle that we could have ever experienced was Mother Nature. 2 weeks prior to the World Rowing Championships, we were physically building out the venue, building out grandstands and welcoming teams. We had 71 different countries coming. And Hurricane Irma decided to start working its way.
You couldn't control that.
I mean, literally dead on, was headed towards Sarasota. And for the 2 years prior, and I love this because our emergency operations department of Sarasota County had continued to harp all the planning. I was like, guys, I have to plan an event. I need to get some grandstands and this, and they kept harping on it. So our staff, we did it. We did so much contingency planning, and I'm beyond words thankful that they made that such a priority in our world, because once it started happening, I could not have been more proud of the staff and the cities, both Bradenton and Sarasota, how quickly everyone started responding. And not only did it miss us, it started moving to the other coast, which we were thankful for. So it wasn't a direct hit. And we were able to get the city rallied behind us, cleaned us up. And do you know that literally, I'm doing conference calls at 2 a.m. with Europe saying, I'm gonna have to call and cancel the World Championships. And like, just wait, we'll know in a little bit longer. And they're like, well, we may have to delay this, that, and whatever. And I said, just have faith. And we ended up opening ceremonies on the originally scheduled day, and literally were recognized as hosting one of the best world championships to date. So when you talk about overcoming adversity, that wasn't me, that was a team of us. And it's about trusting your staff and getting the right people around you. And if there's anything I could ever say that I'm so thankful for is that event specifically. I was able to build a village, a community that we all put our hearts and souls into that event, and it came out on top. Not to say we didn't all turn gray, and it was a little stressful, a little PSD after, but it was definitely, it was worth it at the end when we could sit back and our dreams came true. It was quite remarkable.
I think I got gray hairs, and I didn't even work there. I was several states away.
That was my calls to you all the time.
I was rooting you on. I was cheering you all on. So, you talk a lot about, in that answer, you talk a lot about your team and the community and the village and the friends that helped you out, and the staff that helped you out. And so therefore, I know this next question is going to be tough, so I'm going to ask you to talk about yourself and you, which is, and I think during the course of conversations over the course of my recruiting career, I felt more comfortable talking about this, which is the need for better, more stronger female leaders at the executive level, college, pro, minor league, you name it. And by the way, not just in the traditional, ways that it's HR, right? It's corporate services or premium services. But you didn't come up, you started your career out in sales, but since the Greater Cleveland for 10 years and every stop since then, it's been a unique background. It's been very unconventional. What tips do you have? What advice do you have towards either the graduating senior that, female or the up and coming rising star female that wants to just crush it in this industry? What do you, clearly we're talking more about that nowadays because of social justice. And I think it needs to be more prevalent on the female side of things as well. Let's do what we can to get more females in senior leadership roles. What's your advice? What are your tips?
Well, Mark, I'm a huge advocate for being a part of groups like WISE, Women in Sports and Events, and others that are near and dear to my heart, because I think that there was a perception for women that because there were so few of us, they were actually harder and more competitive with each other versus taking each other and rising together, where men do a much better job at that than women do, and still to this day. So for me, I believe in really trying to mentor, expose myself to younger girls that are interested in talking through it and helping them pave a path, open a door, open multiple doors, whatever that might look like. But if I was to give some tips to someone who's looking to consider this industry coming out of high school, I would say never lock yourself into one thing that you want to do. Like, oh, I want to be a sideline reporter. Oh, I want to be in events. I want to be in marketing. I was that girl a few years ago when I first, quite a few years ago, I was that girl that I wanted to be sports marketing. And I'll never forget, my entry into sports was in sales. I had never done anything in my life in sales. But at that standpoint, I was doing kind of more the service side of sales at the Cavaliers. But what it taught me was such a different perspective. And I was so thankful the exposure I received in a department that maybe is not what I had a major in or what I really wanted to do, but it opened up more channels for the rest of my career. To this day, I'm still thankful for the people that got me my start in Cleveland at the Cavaliers, because that network is still there to this day. And we've all gone to different places. So I would say, don't lock yourself in. Don't think you have to be at a pro team. Don't think you have to go the traditional sports college or pro. Look into sports commissions. Look into, the running races. This will give you the network, because we're so, athletics, we're just interconnected on a whole different level. Everyone makes fun of me and I use this term, but as a swimmer, once you're in there like swimwear, right? So because you just got to get your foot in the door. Once you're in there, you can expand. I mean, look at my path. I mean, I have done group sales, event management, marketing, communications, CR, and now this external. But guess what? My external that I'm doing involve every single thing that I just did all my career. And it's kind of brought it all together into one pretty little package. So, and I will be very honest, I never even considered college athletics. It was never even in my scope or thought. And I will never forget when Michael Kelly started talking to me about it. And I said, I don't really know anything about it. And I said, I was a college athlete, obviously, but I was kind of thrown off by the title, because I was like, what is external affairs?
Yeah. You're not used to that title in the rest of the non-college world. Yeah.
I was like, what is that? It's a very different lingo over there for sure. But I was guilty of it, and I watched too many others become guilty of it. They continue to narrow their search and narrow their thought process on, and this is to men and women. This isn't even focused on women, and I also think for a female, find that mentor. That may not even be a female. It could be a male. My mentors were all male until I got later into my years. But I think it is important to find someone who's an advocate for females and are going to look to help you find that path and help you get there. And they don't look at you differently. And that's why I don't want it to be male, female. I want it to be because I'm their best candidate or I'm the right person. And I do believe that women have, different contributions that they can bring that are different. There's 2 females on our cabinet right now at USF, and it's interesting sometimes our conversations, the way the guys will speak and the way the 2 females will say, well, what about this? And it's the perfect balance. We all bring something unique to the table. And I think that it's becoming more and more appreciated across all industries. And it's exciting to watch the growth for sure.
I love that you talk about the mentor angle too, and even mentors that are different, that look different than you, sound different than you, then maybe do something very different than you. And I remember, just as a quick sidebar, I was at a Sports Business Journal Game Changers event, I think it was a year or 2 ago, and there was 2 people on stage, and I'm just having a senior moment, so I can't remember who they were. But the mentee was talking. The mentee, again, both executives in the industry, but the mentee, African-American female, who I believe is Catholic, was talking about her mentor, who was a white male Jewish guy. And they were like, and she sought him out. Like she said, I want to get like literally the exact opposite of me, but their roles were different too. Their backgrounds and their careers were different. Their education was different. But she made it a point. She said visually, obviously you couldn't tell, but I think her point was exactly what I'm learning something different than just choosing somebody that looks, acts, and has the same background as me as my mentor. I can learn much more that way. So
absolutely. And it's interesting. I was obviously, being a swimmer, I didn't always have I wasn't a sorority or anything like that. I considered my swimming as my sorority, but now in my later, my career world life, joining WISE, Women in Sports and Events, has become kind of my sorority. It's become something that whenever I hear my girlfriends talk about their sorority in college, and I'm like, wow, I have that same thing now and in my everyday life, because the things that I'm now facing in a career, like whether it's juggling family or, I don't have kids, but some people have that, that balance of trying to do some different things in their lives that maybe I couldn't have talked to my mentor about, maybe because my mentor was a male.
Right.
We didn't have the same obstacles that I did. And it's nice to have a female role model in your life. And it doesn't have to be in your job. It doesn't have to be, it could be in your church life, in your personal life, whatever that looks like. But knowing and having someone that you can relate to your point, it's good to have that balance of someone who can relate to you and give you advice, and someone who's kind of thinking opposite. It allows you to think a lot more broad, for sure.
Totally agree. And I love that you brought up WISE too. Something, again, I think it's important that WISE continues to expand to new markets and expand their reach as well. I was curious if you wouldn't mind, I had two questions about USF just to kind of wrap it up. And the second one, understandably so, might be a little more of a challenging question to answer about the fall and the winter. But your goals, your personal and professional goals for USF for the remainder of 2020 and 2021. What are some of your thoughts? Just kind of looking ahead, some goals, not, hey, is football going to happen? Although maybe that's going to be my wrap-up question. What are your personal and professional goals for USF?
Yes, so we have taken this time, this COVID break, because it has been far from a break. It's been an opportunity for our staff to not only get to know each other better. I never thought that doing Zoom calls with a staff of 40 would allow me to get to know them better than I would in an office. But there has been a different, unique, we did vision boards. I'm actually sitting here staring at mine. I made each of our staff go through on a Zoom happy hour, which was not obviously what we would consider happy hour, but a staff team to get together. And we literally went through and listen to each other's vision boards. And I learned more about my team, and my staff actually learned more about each other that they thought they knew so much about, because we do spend a lot of time together. And they're like, never knew that was your goal. So there's been an opportunity. So on a personal cultural growth of our staff, I think we've learned we're all helping to fight to go to the same results, but we all have different goals at the end. So from a personal growth for my staff, that's been a big objective of mine, because I feel like if you have a different respect for each other, you're all going to get better together, and you're all going to come together in a time of crisis, which is what we've been doing, and be better at the end. From a just purely USF athletics perspective, we are taking a big step back and getting our process and procedures into a much better situation. Something that no one mentioned to me, there's a high turnover in college athletics. And it's not because of anything other than they're always trying to grow and go and get higher and higher and higher. And so with that, I had to not fight it, but respect it and try to figure out a better way to manage it, so that we're not having turnover times where we're down staff, which we're already very, very limited on at our university. So finding a way that we can be more productive and not beat our team up as we try to get through those processes. And it's been really fun to watch my team come together in these sport cluster groups, as we call them. They are collaborating, they are working together, they're coming up with solutions, and really focusing on not just if we have a season this year, but what that looks like for the future to make this much easier, so that we're not spinning our wheels as we try to manage 19 sports. And that it's a lot. It's we have coach expectations, we have our, student athletes expectations, fan expectations, our own expectations. So we had to kind of put those into check and, put the shoes of every single one of those people that I just mentioned, and try to walk through the process and make it the most effective and efficient, but most importantly, even ourselves. How do we make sure that we're not burning ourselves out and being able to accomplish all of our goals? So I anticipate us to, I've never done more contingency planning in my entire life. I think that we have a plan for every potential scenario that could happen for the rest of the season based on what we know today. And I really hope that the growth of our staff together, the opportunity for us to think outside the box and plan and be prepared for a bigger future and think bigger next year is exactly what I hope to have accomplished before the end of 2020.
Well, I know that the 1A part of that question about the fall is, that's like the reporter that has to sneak in the question that we feel comfortable asking. So I'll just say I wish everybody in college athletics good luck planning for plans A, through Z, and probably numbers under each of those as well as you try to figure out that puzzle piece of the fall sports season.
Yes.
Hopefully it occurs in some way, shape, or form, but we shall see.
We shall see. I'm an optimist, so I feel like we're going to get something in, and I think it'll be worth all the work that we've put in so far.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, an absolute pleasure always catching up with you, relearning a lot about your background, but also sharing your background with others, helping tell the story of USF and everything you're working on there. Obviously, continued success. And thank you again, Meredith.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.